Welcome to a special episode of Fourth and Frames. I'm Andrew Scott with my co-hosts Rhett Manuel and Chris Battistel. And tonight we're running our first redraft mock of the season with special guest Dave Kluge, Andrew Cooper, and then Jorge Edwards behind the screen, as well as Nate Markham and Joe Pepe. Let's get it popping. For those of you that are joining us tonight, if you haven't already, please like the stream, sub to the channel, and hit that little notification bell. It's going to pop up whenever you do sub on our YouTube channel as well, to make sure you're aware of all the new content that's dropping, as well as the player rankings over at fantasyandframes.com. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to follow this show on Twitter at Fourth and Frames. Speaking of Twitter, if you're over watching this on Twitter and you want to join the conversation, we cannot see your comments, so hop on over to YouTube so that you can join the conversation with us. Now, allow me to bring in our established guest, a group ready to answer your questions while we make fun of each other's picks during this mock draft. We've got the writer and host of the Launchpad podcast on the Fantasy Guys Network, Dave Kluge. Dave, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Always a pleasure. These are my favorite shows to be on. I feel like if I'm going on like another show and I got to like prep and put in time and effort, but this, I just get to mock draft, talk about my picks. Doesn't get better than this. These are the best shows.
Yeah, no prep required at all over here. And then we also have the lead NFL analyst over at Fantasy Alarm, Andrew Cooper. Andrew, Coop, how you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent, man. I noticed on the stream here the scratch I got from my dog is healing just enough that it looks like a pimple, so that's a good look. It's only, you almost want it to be more like a cut at this stage, right? So, but hey, I'm ready to mock. I'm ready to rock. Let's go, baby.
Look at somebody that's in his mid-30s or early 30s is still getting pimples and all that stuff, man. I can
that's the game, dude. Yeah, you just say it's a dog scratch or a bite. Yeah,
I've got a new excuse, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's for you, dude.
All right, so before we get into the mock draft tonight, we're doing just a standard 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 kicker for some reason, and 1 defense and 4 bench spots, 13 rounds. Before we get into that, I got a question for you guys. Chris did a great job throwing something in here that I thought would be fun to discuss. If you had the chance to draft any quarterback from NFL history for your fantasy team, who would be your ultimate fantasy quarterback and why? Dave, I'll let you jump in and answer first.
We're talking long term or just like one season? Because I mean,
you need 1 year to win your redraft league.
Might be the same answer, honestly.
I got it right over my shoulder right here, man. Lamar Jackson in 2019, that was unbelievable. Just like wild efficiency through the air, rushing over 1,000 yards on the ground. I was lucky enough to draft him in just about every single one of my leagues back in 2019. Got a nice little pile of money at the end of the year. So I'd do it again. Go right back to the well with 2019 Lamar Jackson.
So did that 2019 season help pay for that jersey behind you, or do you already have that?
I actually won this one.
Nice.
The guys over at 14 Personnel, they were doing a giveaway a couple of years ago for Lamar Jackson's autographed jersey, and I was pretty happy to win that one.
Andrew, you have the same answer, or you got somebody else in mind?
I got some different ones. First I want to say Lamar Jackson with that season, I have great satisfaction from that because I was arguing with one of my buddies, and he decided to do it on Twitter, which makes it even funnier. He was like, I was saying, Patrick Mahomes, sometimes the person that leads the league in touchdowns doesn't throw 40 touchdowns. And he's like, Mahomes is a lock for 40. And I was like, well, there's a lot of different guys. Anyone could lead the league. And he goes, not Lamar Jackson. And I was like, no, I don't even know. And then all of a sudden he does. So that was beautiful for me. Yeah. I think I would either pick 2013 Peyton Manning, 55 touchdown passes. Hard to argue with that. But if this were a league like the Scott Fish Bowl, I have to throw a shout out to George Blanda. For those that don't know, that's a cheat code though, right? Kluge, tell him. Actually, Rhett, you laughed, but Rhett, tell him why that's the cheat code. Do you know why?
Nah.
Completion.
George Bland is the cheat code in the Scott Fish Bowl because he was also the kicker for the team. So he kicked mad extra points. And in the Scott Fish Bowl, there were 3, right? So if you're in a format like that, where you can start kickers at the flex and there's a super flex, you're getting every point. So no player had a better season in that format than George Blanda back when he was the quarterback and the kicker. Don't think I don't do my homework.
I could not imagine a better answer than that. Thank you. Rhett, you have anybody that these guys hadn't brought up yet?
Look, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it in a dynasty format and I'm also going to come over here with a homer perspective. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a New Orleans Saints fan, and when you have a guy like Drew Brees who had 5,000-yard passing seasons, all those touchdowns, just rolled it up over and over and over again so consistently. In a dynasty format, you would want that guy for the long term, for that 10-year run, whatever it was. Incredible. So that has to be my answer. Strictly homer, but sorry, bud.
That's all right, man. Homer picks are allowed. My answer would probably have been Lamar as well, so I can't argue with that. Like I think technically it wasn't the most points scored total points in a season, but I think he did have, as far as points per game goes, I think it's the most points per game a quarterback's had in a season. So you've got that going for you. And it's just Lamar so much, especially that season, he was so much fun to watch. So getting to have that on your fantasy team every week is just incredible. Shout out to you guys in the YouTube chat, Chalupa Batman, Mr. Scampers, Chuck Bass. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. He said,
Yeah.
No one else.
I was good, good, good quarterbacks. But did they kick 65 extra points in 1961? I'm just saying
they did not.
I'm just gonna go with 2025. Justin Fields is the best quarterback ever. How about that? First quarterback to pass for 4,000 yards and rush for 1,000.
That's the only way to win. Kluge finds the only way to win, which is picking future picks, dude. He goes full back to the future.
Bears quarterbacks. Have you seen?
I haven't seen it, man. It's crazy. You guys have been a team since like the 20s, and only like 13 guys have 1,000-yard receiving seasons. You guys are dead.
Nobody has ever passed for 4,000.
You're due.
1,000-yard passer.
You're due. It's time.
You are due. You are due. And Chris mentioned Mike Vick as well. You can't forget Mike Vick, especially that if you go on a points per game basis, that season that he had with Philly. On a points per game, I think he was top 6 or 7 all time on a points per game basis that season he had with Philly. So you can't talk about all time quarterbacks without talking about Mike Vick. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into while we're here. Let's get into this redraft mock. We've all got our spots. Fantasy and Frames member Nate Markham's picking from the 1 spot. I'm going to be at the 2 spot. Coop is following me up at the 3. We got Joe at the 104. Our man Jorge at the 105. And then Chuck Bass, shout out to you. You're in the YouTube chat at the 107. We got Rhett at the 109, Dave at the 110, and then our usual co-host that's here with us but isn't able to be on the screen tonight, Chris, is following it up at the 112. So, Chris, if you're listening, if you could fire this up for us, we'll get it started. We'll let Nate kick us off. Hopefully his job let him go home so he can do this mock with us. And so, while he's on the clock, I'll just open this up and ask, Rhett, you can let me know. He took Justin Jefferson. Is that your 101 as well? Do you have a 101 that you're settled on?
I mean, it's between Jefferson and McCaffrey at this point, just because with the scarcity of running back and how hard it is to find those guys that are going to do everything, running backs are harder and harder to find on a yearly basis. So in this situation at the 101, I'd probably go McCaffrey and then wait on the receiver till that second round. But, I mean, you can't fault him. Jefferson's just a cheat code. So, dude, roll it. Perfect.
Yeah, so where I'm at with that, with McCaffrey, is that if they were to come out today and say that Brock Purdy's a starting QB, I would move McCaffrey to 101. My concern is that if Trey Lance is a starter, now you run into some troubles that a lot of these teams have with the mobile QBs, where they don't dump it down and they take the goal line touchdowns for themselves. If you look at the bottom 3 teams in running back targets last year, it was the Eagles, the Bears, and the Ravens. What do those teams have in common, So that's my one concern with Trey Lance. The day they say it's definitely Brock Purdy and we're ready to rock and roll is the day I move McCaffrey to 1.
So are there any, with McCaffrey too, are there any concerns with the healthy Elijah Mitchell and some of the splits that we saw whenever he was healthy? Are you worried about that at all? Got solid no's across the board, so that makes me feel better. Because
my headphones almost fell off shaking my head just now. Kluge, are you worried about Elijah Mitchell?
No, I actually just wrote an article about McCaffrey about how you can take him confidently at 101. I'm not personally doing it, but it's one of those things. I don't try to say like you have to draft this person, have to draft this person. I tweeted something today. I think Cooper Kupp makes for realistically. I think if you got the 101, you can take Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, or the other one I'm going to throw out there, Travis Kelce. I think it's kind of a choose your own adventure this year from 101. Like most people are going with Justin Jefferson because of what we saw last year, but I don't think you can go wrong. The other thing when looking at like age curves too, McCaffrey's at that age where you'd expect him to start regressing in his efficiency, and he just had his most efficient season ever last year, even before he made the trade to San Francisco. That trade to San Francisco boosted his efficiency even more, but he was killing it when he was with the Panthers on limited volume. So somehow McCaffrey, where most running backs at age 27 are falling face first down the age cliff, he's aging like fine wine. You could still take him 101. I think what Coop said about Purdy being the starter makes a huge difference. What I would love to see more than anything is Deebo Samuel get traded. You know, they've already expressed some interest in possibly trading him, and they cap each other's upside so much. Deebo Samuel could be a top 10 player on any other team in the league, and Christian McCaffrey, it would just be wheels up if Deebo was out of there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So, Coop, we got a question from Gator. And I guess the question, now that we saw your pick, I guess the question is really, if you would have been in my seat at the 102, is that where you would have taken McCaffrey, or is the 3 the sweet spot for CMC for you right now?
Pretty simple for me. If right now I'm taking CMC at 2, Jefferson at 1. I love Chase. I mean, he's amazing. If Trey Lance were named the starting quarterback, I would move him to 3. Like, I'm not moving him that far. It doesn't, like Kluge said, it doesn't matter. If Trey Lance were to be the starter and then Trent Williams were to suffer a season-ending injury, knock on wood, then we would have to have a discussion about where to put McCaffrey, right? But right now, with that dude, that Trent Williams is amazing, bro. Can I quick mini rant? If that dude never wins if that dude can't be the offensive player of the year, forget MVP. If he can't be the offensive player of the year, there will never be an offensive tackle or offensive lineman that wins the award. And I think that's kind of dumb because, you know, not everyone gets to play quarterback or running back. In fact, Pop Warner level, most kids play line. They play offensive line, defensive line. They rotate with that crew. Like, how about admitting that that these players can be some of the best players in the field? So, mini rant over. Trent Williams should have won Offensive Player of the year before last.
Yeah, I think I've kind of come to peace with the fact, and not that I like it, but it feels like that the MVP is basically the best quarterback award, and then the Offensive Player of the year is the best running back or receiver that didn't win MVP because the quarterback did.
That's what I'm saying. Just give one, dude. Give one to literally half the kids out there that play football. This guy is like going in motion. He's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He's pulling as a tackle. Give the kids for the kids. That's what I want. Trent Williams one time. You know,
I love when they line him up as a fullback and just put him straight in the backfield.
That's what I'm saying.
Who's going to stop this 320-pound man coming at him full speed?
It's nuts. It's like Deebo Samuel steps up to the line with a smile on his face to be the last like tethered guy on the line, and he steps back, and the defense is like, "Oh no, here it comes," and they can't stop it, dude. So like, just one time they got to do that. Or why is it so hard to have a offensive lineman of the year award? Like, call it the Trent Williams Award or Orlando Brown, or I don't know, you guys pick your favorite all-time lineman. Just have an award for these guys. What the heck are we doing?
Right. I agree. I agree completely, man. So after you took CMC, Joe took Cooper Kupp at the 104, and then Austin Eckler went to Jorge at the 105, AJ Brown at the 106, Tyreek Hill at the 107, and then Bijan at the 108. Rhett, you took Kelce at the 109. Couldn't let him fall any further?
What's understood ain't got to be explained. Like, there's just such a gap between Kelce and everybody else at that position. Like, he's practically a wide receiver 1. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows what's coming. We know he's getting 150 targets. We know the catches are going to be over 100. We know the touchdowns are in double digits at this point. You ride him until the wheels fall off, and the wheels ain't falling off yet. So until proven otherwise, Kelce at the 109, it's a no-brainer at that point, simply because of positional advantage.
The day you followed that up with CeeDee Lamb, was he the next wide receiver up for you? Or like, I mean, I'm assuming he was, but were there any receivers taken before him that you have in front, that you have CeeDee Lamb in front of? Tyreek, AJ Brown, any of those guys?
Yeah, I would have taken all those guys comfortably ahead of CeeDee Lamb. I was actually really torn between CeeDee and Diggs there, and I was shocked that Diggs made it back to me. I mean, he's consistently going 7th, 8th off the board. I was blown away to get him where I did, but not mad about that whatsoever. But yeah, there was definitely a big tier fall off after 9. I feel like that's where, you know, you can go in a lot of different directions. The top 9 is pretty clear cut. You know, I think the best pick so far, looking at the board, was Travis Kelce falling all the way to 9. And I was just talking about how you could make a realistic argument for him to go 101, and to see some of the guys that went ahead of him. That's just that's an unbelievable value there.
I would take him. Even I would take him there as the late tight end guy. Even I would take Kelce there. That's why I love when someone else takes him, because then it takes the pressure off me. But I would have taken him at 9, 100%. Yeah.
That's only because I was thinking of you that time, though, bud. So it's fine.
Well, that's the thing, is that like you got to lean into what you're good at, and we spend a lot of time. Kluge, you too, man. You spend a lot of time finding these guys. Luckily, we did all right with Ingram last year, but like lean into what you're good at. If you're the late RB guy, don't draft 3 RBs in a row, right? Like if I'm in a 1 tight end league, if I draft Kelsey, then all year I'm gonna be picking up tight ends I'm not going to use and putting them on my bench. So it's like it doesn't help me, but even then, you got to take the guy when he's the guy. Oh, we got a special guest here, huh?
Yeah, that's my daughter, man.
So, Rhett, tell your daughter and us why you decided to go with Davante Adams with the 4th pick in the 2nd round there.
Again, until he is proven otherwise, Davante Adams is just that dude. There was the talk last year that without Aaron Rodgers, what was going to happen? Well, what ended up happening was Davante Adams put up another Davante Adams season. And so when you're looking at it back to back, I'm very happy taking 2 of the most targeted dudes in all of the NFL back to back with my first 2 picks, and then waiting on running back a little bit later. So
let me ask you, if Aaron Rodgers' new number 1 receiver would have been there, would you have taken him over Adams, or do you have Adams over Garrett Wilson?
Right now I have Adams over Wilson, especially in redraft.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I am a little nervous just in terms of Davante Adams, his highest ADOT being last year, and then Jimmy G coming in. I've never been the biggest Jimmy G fan in the first place, so but Davante Adams really, I mean, he's such an incredible receiver. It's hard to doubt, but whenever you factor in the age piece of it and the ADOT, I am a little nervous personally, but even at that point, I would have been happy to take him there as well. But I'm curious, Coop, Dave, your thoughts right now on Davante Adams, where he's going. Are y'all comfortable with where he's at?
I'd be pretty comfortable taking him there. What are we looking at? 16th pick off the board. I think that's all right. Typically where I see him going a lot of times in the best ball and underdog drafts that I'm doing right now, he's going at the end of the 1st round. And at that value, I have 0% Davante Adams. I've drafted him a few times here if he'll slide into the mid early 2nd round. But for a lot of the reasons that you said, you saw a very different Davante Adams last year where he was getting deep downfield, and Jimmy Garoppolo just doesn't do that. He doesn't throw those downfield passes. So I mean, he's good enough that he can do the slants and screens and he can get those high percentage catches, but he's also going on his age 31 season. I don't know if he's going to be able to do the things that Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk have done in San Francisco over the years with the yards after the catch. So he's a guy that, I'll take him at that point just to get a little bit of exposure on him, but he's not somebody that I'm aggressively targeting at all this year.
Yeah, Dave, can I ask you the question, though? We're talking about redraft right now. So if you're talking about a 1-year bet on Davante Adams, I mean, we almost have to take that based off of who he is in the past, right?
31's a scary age, man. And at that age, you're paying up for Davante Adams when you can still get Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, other similarly aged receivers rounds later. I'd rather, if I'm going to be investing in a 31-year-old wide receiver this year, I'd much prefer it to be a 4th or a 5th round pick on Keenan Allen or on DeAndre Hopkins than paying up for Davante Adams.
Let me throw Rhett a bone here in saying that we talk about the quarterback and his play style, but Derek Carr in this situation versus what he did with John Gruden was night and day. Like Derek Carr was like a 70% completion guy with Gruden. With Josh McDaniels, he was 60%, like 55% catch rate. I'm not sure anybody could be worse at actually delivering the football. So even with maybe a few less targets, maybe he's more efficient. That's where I'm at. I'm not taking him at the beginning of the 2nd round or even in the 1st round, but that's, if you can get him in the 2nd round, I mean, hard to argue with a guy that is just like, they've committed to paying him money. He's going to get, I mean, what's the minimum number of targets that he can get, really? 140? I think.
Yeah, that's true. He's going to get peppered with targets.
I'd have gone Amon-Ra and Devonta Smith ahead of Adams, though. Those are the 2 guys that went after him that I have ahead of him in my rankings.
I have Waddle ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown, just saying.
And I'm completely with you on Amon-Ra for the same reasons. It's that because last year we were going off of 150 target year. Only thing we were missing was the touchdowns on Amon-Ra last year. So if those come up by how many?
We're missing the ADOT too. 7-yard ADOT is
And reception perception proved that. Like, he cannot win downfield. Like, you look at the top of that route tree and he just gets capped. I mean, he's a great player for that scheme that they're running in Detroit, but he's not a pure receiver that's just going to be able to beat you all over the field. Like, he needs those scheme touches at the line of scrimmage, and he can do a lot after the catch, and he can make those tough contested catches at the line, but he's not doing anything downfield, unfortunately.
Full PPR, yes. Everything else, smell ya.
So after Devontae Adams with the 204, we had Derrick Henry at the 205, Amon Ra at the 206, Jalen Warren at the 207, Devontae Smith at the 208, Josh Jacobs with the 209, Tony Pollard at the 210. Rhett, hopefully this makes you happy. I took Chris Olave at the 211. And then Nate went T. Higgins and Mark Andrews at the 2-3 turn. I was heavily considering taking Mark Andrews at the 211 just because Nate also hadn't had a tight end, obviously, with him only having one pick off the board, and that was an area that I'd be targeting. I'm not looking at quarterback at this point. I was a full late round quarterback guy for a while, and I've started to come around on some of the earlier quarterbacks, but I'm still not at that point to where I can take these elite quarterbacks in the third round. I can't make myself do it. Now, if a guy I like is there in the fifth round, I'll do that. But with Mark Andrews gone, tight ends off my board. And so I pivoted to running back. It feels gross every time I do it, but at the beginning of the third round, with the volume that I believe that Najee's going to get, and the fact that we have the same quarterback and offensive coordinator, even though I wish it wasn't the same offensive coordinator in that system, and the offensive line improved in the offseason, I do like Najee Harris in the third round. And then Coop, talk to me about DK Metcalf at the 303.
Yeah, so honestly, if I were able to get a wide receiver I really liked in the last round, then I would have potentially taken a quarterback there. I'm not crazy opposed to it if it's a guy that I believe has league-winning upside, like the 3 big at the top there. But with Metcalf, the reason I'm in on him is, there's a couple. The first is that I believe that Jackson Smith-Njigba ends up being a Chris Godwin type guy, where when he came in the league, he was behind Mike Evans at split end and Deshaun Jackson at flanker, and even was only mixing in with Adam Humphries, but he was a part-time guy playing the slot. I think that's how JSN starts. But even if he doesn't, he's not taking snaps from the split end. DK Metcalf plays a totally different role than what these other guys play. If anything, he'll take snaps from Lockett. And it's basically deciding who's going to play in two wide receiver sets versus the others. When I look at DK, he had the same number of targets, same number of receptions, essentially, as A.J. Brown. The only difference was Yak. And A.J. Brown had 17 broken tackles last year, and DK Metcalf only had 7. Well, just a couple of years ago, when DK Metcalf was wide receiver 7, he had 17 broken tackles. So I've seen this guy do it. I've seen the guy do the thing we need him to do to be a high-end guy. And obviously, he's a freakazoid physically. So all we really need is for him and Geno Smith to get on the same page and kind of set him up for a little more success. You know, no player in the league has 4 years in a row with double-digit touchdowns double-digit end zone targets besides DK Metcalf. Like, I could go on and on about DK Metcalf if you really wanted me to, but we only have, if we talk about one player for that so long, it's gonna be a long time. But I do love this player. I think he's a great guy. I hope he lays off the candy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love DK, and the end zone targets was something until I saw it on Twitter I didn't realize was so heavy last year, and so that was something that really opened my eyes to him as somebody
22.
Yeah, it pushed it up my board a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Whenever I saw that, I went to my rankings and I decided I needed to move him up a little bit. So I like that call quite a bit. So speaking of quarterbacks, here we go. Joe took one at the 304, Patrick Mahomes. Ramondre Stevenson went to Jorge at the 305, TJ Hawkinson at the 36, Amari Cooper at the 37, Breece Hall at the 38. Rhett, you took the second quarterback off the board, Josh Allen at the 309. Talk to me.
You blew my stack, Rhett.
Sorry, bud. Warned you ahead of time that I was going to try to mess with you as much as possible.
You should have said nicer things about Devontae Adams.
But no, this is where I was. Is that at this point, looking at the board, there was nobody that I was really comfortable taking with that third round pick, the running back position. We're not sure what Etienne's role is going to be yet. We think that he should have a good role, but we know that Doug Peterson loves to use multiple running backs. Who else was there right after that? I mean, you had Ken Walker, once again, Zach Charbonnet waiting in the wings, Jahmyr Gibbs, not quite sure where we are. And then a couple picks, I'm pretty sure I can still get one of those guys anyway, as well as Joe Mixon. So it was just the thing where if you have a potentially league-winning running back, quarterback, with rushing upside that you get at the end of the third round, I mean, you take that all day, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then after Josh Allen comes off the board, Dave, after he ruined your stack, you pivoted with Keenan Allen, who's a guy that I like a ton this year. So talk to me a little bit about Keenan Allen.
Well, I did a little bit earlier, talking about Devontae Adams going when
Right.
1-2 turn, and it seems like you get Keenan Allen, who I don't really have like a huge gap between the two of them. And then this guy that I'm taking right here too, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, they're all getting up there in age, but I think they've still got enough in the tank that we can see another elite season from each of these guys. I mean, Keenan Allen last year, when he was healthy, he was pulling nearly a 30% target share. Now we're looking at what Kellen Moore is going to do to that Chargers offense. I think it's going to be a much more fast-paced, high-powered offense than we saw last year. Additionally, people are so quick to forget that Justin Herbert, like if you just watch the games that he was playing after that rib injury last year, that was not the Justin Herbert we saw through his first couple of years in the season.
Right.
So now he's removed from that rib injury. I think we see him go back to, the dominant passer that we saw in years past. Keenan Allen, I mean, I get it. He was hurt last year, and that's always the concern once you start seeing hamstrings get achy on a 31-year-old. I understand why people are scared, but when he's healthy, he's still going to be, an 8 or 9 10 target per game type of guy.
I mean, like that, if you were to drop the kind of profile that ages well, Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins, it's like that Anquan Bolden, you don't need to be fast, but possession receiver type guy. And Keenan Allen, when he came back over the last 8 games, he was the wide receiver 2. And Tom Telesco comes out and says he's our Charlie Joyner. Like you couldn't pick a guy to compare someone to vouch for them playing into old age, because Charlie Joyner joined that team at 29 years old and played until he was 38. So if he's Charlie Joyner, then we can be drafting Keenan Allen for years and years and years.
And then I completely understand why people are nervous about DeAndre Hopkins not having a team right now. But can it be worse than it was last year? I mean, this guy was playing with I can't even remember the guys' names, the quarterbacks that were playing. I mean, it was a joke after Kyler Murray went down. And during that time, he was still averaging almost 11 targets per game, on pace for 1,400 yards last year. So people are concerned because they don't know where he's going to be playing. But I don't see any situation that could be worse than what he had to deal with last year with Colt McCoy and whoever it was under center. So, I mean, those are, looking at this build, these aren't normally the guys that I target. Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, these 30-plus receivers. But they were falling to values that were just too good to pass up.
Right. Yeah, they just keep falling. And then so after you take Keenan Allen, Jalen Hurts goes at the 311. Chris has got a bully running back build going. He took Travis Etienne and Ken Walker to go along with Saquon and Jonathan Taylor. Kyle Pitts goes at the 402. And then we talked about Hopkins. Rhett, you take Joe Mixon at the 404. Not concerned with the legal stuff going on? Any of that stuff bother you at all?
I mean, it was him or Gibbs at this point, and we don't know what Gibbs is yet. We think he's going to be a 60-catch guy, and we think he's going to get a large percentage of that role. But there's also Monty sitting there waiting in the wings. We know Dan Campbell likes to use his multiple running backs. We know there are a lot of moving parts there. There's Amon-Ra. There's J-Mo coming back after 6 games. There are a lot of people in that offense. And really, at the end of the day, just being an unproven asset – it's the same with Bijan Robinson. In redraft right now, I'm kind of shying away from those guys simply because I don't know what that's going to look like just yet. We assume they're going to get a lot of volume, but until it comes to be proven, I mean, those are dynasty picks for me in the early going.
Yeah, I wish I was as strong as you, man, but I'm taking Bijan pretty much all over the place right now. I can't stop myself. And I'm the same way with Kyle Pitts too. And so, Coop, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Kyle Pitts in redraft right now. What are we doing with him? Am I crazy? I've got him as my tight end 3 right now. Is that wild?
That's fine, man. Well, all we care about is upside, right? That's the game. Early on, in the very, very beginning, we ask ourselves why we're paying all the way up. Why am I paying for Travis Kelce? Why am I paying for Mark Andrews? Literally, after the first couple, we have to start asking why not? Why can't this guy get 120 targets? Why can't this guy be a top 2 target on his team, right? So for me, Kyle Pitts, I've already seen him have 1,000 yards. Travis Kelce didn't have 1,000 yards till he was 27. Zach Ertz has 1,000-yard season. This guy's living in rarefied air. So I'm absolutely on board. I find it hard for me to take a few guys. I don't want to drop too many names while they're still on the board, but I really only look at high guys that can lead their team in targets. Who is going to be a focal point of their offense, because the vast majority of guys that have difference-making upside do lead their team in targets, or they're at least second. So that's the game we're playing in terms of upside in one tight end leagues. When you get in the Scott Fish Bowl and some of these tight end premium leagues and stuff like that, now tight end 15 and stuff, they're viable, right? But from tight end 7, 8, 9, I mean, Tyler Higbee was tight end 6 last year or 7 or whatever it was. He was the least startable tight end 6 or 7 that I've ever seen. He was literally throwing up 0 spots on 90% snap shares. So miss me with all that. And Tyler Higbee actually this year may be kind of interesting, but that's for a later discussion.
We'll
and I just want to say real quick, the only reason I picked Joe Burrow there is because I think that's funny. I picked him because you have Chase and Higgins, and I'm like, you know what? Not letting them get that easy stack. No easy buckets, dude. No easy buckets in a mock draft.
Right. No, we play to win the game. It doesn't matter if it's a mock, the real thing. None of that matters, man. No, so I can respect that. And I would have struggled with that because it would have been in consideration for sure. But for me personally, whenever I'm looking at the quarterback position in these one quarterback leagues, I want a guy with a ton of rushing upside. And so Fields and Lamar were the two guys I was hoping would fall to me here, and neither one of them did. We had Lamar go off at the 405, and then Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, then Justin Fields at the 408 by Jorge, who just killed me there, and the Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Burrow. I took J.K. Dobbins, who I like a ton. I think that, he was a guy I faded last year because I was nervous about the injury, but I think it's all wheels up for Dobbins this year. And then Aaron Jones and DJ Moore going to back-to-back picks there. And so I kind of struggle at this point with quarterback because those were the two guys that I was targeting. But I do think, and Dave mentioned this earlier whenever we were talking about Justin Herbert, that he was a different guy after he got that rib injury. And I mean, he probably didn't have any business being out there at that point whenever he got injured. But prior to that injury, it's not that he's, a Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields rusher, but he's not a statue by any means either. And I think that injury played a lot into the downplay and rushing from that point to the season forward. And so I think that with the new offensive coordinator, hopefully they'll let him throw a little bit more downfield. And I love the addition of Quentin Johnston as well. So I think that Herbert will have a bounce back season here. And he's the last guy I'm really comfortable taking in this range at quarterback. Coop, I don't know if you disagree. You already have your quarterback, so obviously you weren't going to take him there. But I don't know if you disagree on terms of Herbert being the last of a tier there, if you would have Lawrence or somebody else in there as well.
You can't like Joe Burrow without liking Justin Herbert. And I will say right, it's like, and the thing with Justin Herbert, right, is that when you sort every quarterback that threw 200 passes, which it's not a crazy high bar, but unless you're Joe Flacco early in the season just playing huck it, chuck it football, that means if you threw 200 passes, you played at least how many games, Kluge? 5 or so, right? Like, that. Yeah, at least, which is season. Yeah. Like that's a decent number of passes. Yeah, if you're Justin Fields, that's like what? 15 games. Yeah, exactly. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So like thing is with Herbert, so when you set it at that bar and sort everybody, he was 34th in ADOT, partially because he's hurt, partially because Joe Lombardi just likes to dump it down. Those days are over, man. Kellen Moore comes in, and under those circumstances, he was still 3rd in the league in passing yards. So you mix a little Kellen Moore on there. Mike McCarthy was saying that Kellen Moore scores too many touchdowns. Rhett, is that bad? Is that bad for fantasy football? The offensive coordinator likes to throw too much and score too many touchdowns, makes the defense tired.
I don't think there's ever been a situation where a high volume passing attack was bad for fantasy football. No, Coop.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, make the defense tired. That's great. Like, yeah, we want to get the ball back as fast as possible. So, yeah, I'm in. Kluge, you in on Herbert?
Oh, 100%. And you hit on it. I think Joe Lombardi was a huge thing, too. We already talked about the rib injury a little bit, but Joe Lombardi went in there and he has Justin Herbert, who's like a Ferrari. Like, this dude can hook a ball 70 yards downfield off 1 foot. Like, he can do all these things. And he's coaching him up like he's a 37-year-old Drew Brees and just making him check down nonstop to Austin Eckler. So I can't wait to see what he looks like in an offense that isn't going to put a hindrance on him. I mean, they just had him on such a short leash last year that now with Kellen Moore, we're going to see a completely different offense. Herbert, realistically, I mean, I understand because of last year why you can't put him up there, but realistically, I mean, he's got as good of a chance to finish as the overall QB1 as anybody else this year. There's just the risk because of what we saw last year, and that's why he's one of my favorite values in drafts right now.
I like betting on him to lead the league in passing yards. That's the bet I like with him. If it's drafts come down to whether or not it falls to you at the right spot or not, but that's something you can just go do.
I like that a lot. And Coop, another thing I like a lot, you took Drake London. I did a Dynasty target profile on Drake London about 3 months ago, talking about how much I love the guy. But from a redraft standpoint, you don't have to convince me, but talk to our viewers about why Drake London is such a good pick there at the front of the 5th round.
Yeah, I mean the thing with the metrics community, like we like to do both. Like you have to mix film. I mean, there's none of us that don't watch football. Maybe Jacob Sanderson likes to sometimes say that he doesn't even watch, but I know he does. You know what I mean? But like, he's like a metrics genius. Like he's one of my favorites. So like, but in the metrics community, the whole idea of the breakout move, right, is to look for these guys where everything on a per snap basis or a per route basis looks amazing. Right, the targets, the yards per route run, all these metrics that we love, the WOBA, all these expected numbers, right? Like we love Drake London in every single one of these numbers, and you just hope that the fuel for fantasy, snaps, targets, all that increases, right? And it wasn't just the Bears. Last year, the Falcons were historically crazy low in pass attempts. Those two teams, I had to go back to 2009 Jets to find a team that threw fewer passes per game than the Falcons. Then the Bears, you got to go back to like 2002 Steelers. Like these teams are just not throwing. So just assuming they go back to normal, these guys are going to be bigger. Now, I will say, if I had a different start to my draft, if I went CMC and a wide receiver I wanted, I actually would have taken the guy Chuck Bass took. Shout out Chuck Bass. He really is a jerk, but he made a really good pick with Miles Sanders there. So got to give him props where it's due.
Something else I'll say about Drake London too is like we get so infatuated with projections this time of year, and everyone say that it's impossible for Drake London, but there are so many avenues that he can pay off at ADP. One, maybe Desmond Ridder is just a lot better than we expected, but I think the easiest way for Drake London to pay off at his ADP or surpass his current ADP is if Kyle Pitts gets injured, which, let's face it, it's football. Players get injured all the time, and we saw when Kyle Pitts was down last year, he was averaging almost 85 yards per game. He was pulling almost 10 targets per game. So if you can see, there are a lot of ways for him. I mean, if Bijan Robinson is healthy, and if Kyle Pitts is healthy, and if Desmond Ridder isn't that good, and if Arthur Smith, like we're playing all of these ifs as to why Drake London can't break out, but there's also a ton of ways and reasons that he can.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Rhett, go ahead, man.
All right, so Dave, I have a question for you. Jorge in round 5 took Alexander Madison. I know Dalvin Cook was released, but I have to tell you, a guy coming off of a 3.8 yards per carry season, what am I missing for Alex Madison to be going in round 5?
I mean, it's tough because if you look on like every individual spot start that he had, and the fantasy community would be behind it. Like if Dalvin Cook was injured and we knew Alexander Madison was going to be starting, everybody would put him as a top 10 quarterback or a top 10 running back in weekly rankings. It's easy to do that for a 1 week spot start, but throughout his entire career, we've never seen him do it over a full season. So on one hand, I do understand the appeal with Alexander Madison, but we don't know how these touches are going to split up. I think it's kind of naive to think that Alexander Madison is just going to walk into the same, the second best opportunity share in the league that Dalvin Cook had last year. The reality is that Ty Chandler is probably going to get mixed in. Kenny Nwangu is probably going to get mixed in. And realistically, they could even bring in another guy off the street. There's still Kareem Hunt floating around out there and Ezekiel Elliott and some other guys. So right now at ADP, I've been avoiding Madison a little bit. Loaded up on my Dynasty shares last year. Early in the best ball season, I was drafting him a ton. But now with him going in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, that's just a little too rich for me.
I agree. I think it's a little bit too rich for me as well. And then after Alexander Madison, not to be too hard on the guys drafted, but at the 506, I think in a one quarterback league, that's too early for me for Dak, especially with Lawrence and a couple other guys on the board. Miles Sanders at the 507, Jerry Jeudy at the 508, Cam Akers at the 5'9, Darren Waller at the 5'10. Rhett, I know that's got to make you happy but sad at the same time because I know how much you love Waller, so you probably love to see him going off the board, but there has to be probably a little piece of you that was hoping he'd make it back to you in the 6th round if I had to guess.
Yeah, but also at the same time, I was looking at my rankings again today, and after a conversation with Chris last week and looking at what TJ Hawkinson did last year, I actually dropped Darren Waller down from my hot takeish tight end 3 to 4, and I just moved Hawkinson up this week. So, I mean, I'm coming off of the ledge just a little bit, but I still think with the situation he's running into, with the fact that there is no real proven number 1, and he is easily the best receiver / tight end in that room in New York, I still think you have to look at him and think that whatever the projections are, you have to shoot above him, in my opinion, this year.
Yeah, what do you think about that one, Coop? I was stoked to get Darren Waller there. Right now, I've got him as my tight end 2.
You did the right thing.
Tight end 3.
Yeah. You got to say that. First, I got to say for Dak Prescott, everything I said about Justin Herbert, you have to realize the other side of that. Am I on the clock?
No, it's me.
You have to realize the other side of that, where if Mike McCarthy says he wants to run the ball, he fires the guy who's throwing the ball, then that's not good for Dak. And his over-under is set at like 4,050 yards, more than Jalen Hurts, more than anybody in that division. I mean, the rest of the division kind of weird, but like I'm willing to bet the under on that, you know. And I love Dak, but I'm just not taking him there. With Darren Waller, he's a guy who fits exactly everything that I've preached this entire time. The pinned article on my profile, you can read that, and then you don't need my advice, which is a pretty stupid thing to say given what I do for work. But, you know, for everybody that just wants the easy route, I post my rankings and stuff there behind the paywall. Get the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, okay? But, you know, like me and Kluge, we've done so much talking about this. I mean, how many shows have we done, Kluge? Like 1 million, right? And like we talk about this stuff all the time. What do we want? We want
team and targets.
We want targets. We want focal points. We want guys with speed. We want converted wide receivers. We want end zone touch, like end zone prowess. I mean, what? Where does he not check the box?
Team. Like
got new team
every box.
Yeah, there's nobody that we can point at. Like some of these other guys. I mean, not to bash anybody here, but like let's say George Kittle, for instance. Last year, when all 4 guys were healthy, he was the 4th target on the team. Not only behind Debo, not only behind Ayuk, but also behind Christian McCaffrey. Like right. Drafting Dallas Goedert at tight end is like drafting AJ Dillon, because you're telling yourself, I've got a guy that I could start, but if somebody gets hurt, then now he's really good. And that's what you're doing drafting Dallas Goedert. He's fine, but if a wide receiver gets hurt, now he's really good. I'm not really into drafting handcuffs before I'm done drafting the guys that could be megastars, right? And we're good enough at this that if Waller falls flat or Pitts falls flat, we'll just find somebody else, man. Somebody every year for the last 6 years, a tight end's come from outside the top 17 in ADP to finish top 5. We're going to find them, baby. We always do.
We always do. And something that I've always shied away from personally in one quarterback leagues is if I take a quarterback earlier in like the mid rounds, I'm going to wait on tight end. If I take a tight end early, I'm going to wait on quarterback. I try to, to stay away from stacking up both of the onesie positions early on, just me personally. But after Darren Waller, Christian Watson, Dallas Goedert, and Chris Godwin at the turn for Chris, Damian Pierce at the 602, followed by Hollywood Brown at the 6'3", Brandon Ayuk at the 6'4", Mike Williams at the 6'5", Michael Pittman at the 6'6", Deontay Johnson at the 6'7", George Kittle at the 6'8", as we mentioned, James Conner at the 6'9", Rashad White at the 6'10". I know that this was a pick that was highlighted in our YouTube comments. Coop triple stamping my double stamp with that White pick. So it sounds like you've got some fans in the YouTube comments for your White pick. So talk a little bit about Rashad White and the volume that he can expect to see in Tampa this year.
That's nice to Chuck say something nice after I called him a jerk. That's the thing about calling people. My policy on calling people names here or on Twitter is it's just like real life. You're allowed to be mean, but only to your friends. And right. That's our boy Chuck, right? So yeah, man, Rashad White, I just like take a look around, right? And then the argument that I've had is I love Miles Sanders, the player that he took. And a lot of the people that I respect, right? You guys, and then there's there's some guys that I've been following for a long time, and I've had these arguments with them, like John Daigle. He came on our show. We talked about this. Me and JJ went at it for a while, and the same thing. And they keep saying the same things. Ian Hartitz, they say, okay, why am I drafting Miles Sanders when I could get a guy later, like Kluge was saying about DeAndre Hopkins, these guys, if I could take James Conner, if I could take Rashad White. So now my default as, hey, you know what? We learn from everybody in this community. If my guy Miles Sanders goes, I just turn it to Ian Hartitz and I say, oh, I'll just take James Conner. Well, Joe Pepe took James Conner. All right. Well, now I'm JJ and I'm taking Rashad White. And now that those guys are like, it's like, why not? You don't have to do this all by yourself. So my pick with Rashad White there is he's the guy. Unless Leonard Fournette says, give me my old Walker back, I don't see why he can't be the guy, right? So I'm in on that. And then I swing back with Christian Kirk to just add a little safety because it was getting a little cold at wide receiver on my squad there. So
right. So after Rashad White, I took Tyler Lockett at the 6'11". It feels like every year this guy's he's underdrafted and then he outperforms ADP. And maybe this is the year that catches up to him with the addition of JSN. So
it is every year. It is every year though. Like I went and looked at it. Every year since DK Metcalf has been drafted, he's outperformed ADP 4 years in a row.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Our resident Chiefs fan Nate Markham takes Isaiah Pacheco at the 6-12, which I honestly I don't hate. I mean, obviously he doesn't have the pass catching, but the touchdown upside as the goal line back, the lead back there in Kansas City. He could have a Jamal Williams-esque season and outperform that ADP. Mike Evans. I took Treylon Burks. I can't quit the man. Look, if DeAndre Hopkins signs in Tennessee for whatever reason, he would desire to do that. I don't know, but if that happens, I would push Treylon down. But as things stand right now, I love Treylon this year. And then, as you mentioned, Christian Kirk there at the 7-3, DeAndre Swift at the 7-4. A pick I like a lot, Jordan Addison at the 7-5. I think that he's in for a ton of volume with how much Minnesota is going to throw this year. He was a guy that it was basically between Addison and Burks there at the 7-2 for me. I like that pick quite a bit. And then another guy that I like a ton, quite a more crowded receiver room, but JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 7-6, David Montgomery at the 7-7. I think that's a great pick as well. They're going to run the ball a ton. It's not going to be all Jahmyr Gibbs. They brought him in for a reason. Jahan Dotson at the 7-8, George Pickens at the 7-9, and then Dave, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Talk to me about Alvin Kamara at the 7-10.
I mean, if you're going for a zero running back approach, which I am, 5 of my first 6 picks were wide receivers, snuck one tight
Right.
end in there. You got to swing for the upside with running backs, and the upside with Alvin Kamara is that he doesn't get suspended, and I just got a guy who should be a 3rd round pick in the 7th round. Obviously, there's the chance that he gets suspended there, and there's a lot of red flags with his waning efficiency and things like that last year. But I'm not buying too much into it. Derek Carr likes to check down at his running backs a lot. So if he can somehow sidestep this suspension, I don't think that he's got the overall RB1 upside like we've seen in years past. He's not the same guy that he used to be, but he's still a guy that is going to be heavily involved in the passing game and somebody that I can start as an RB1 in a zero running back build.
The people that don't think he might be able to sidestep that suspension weren't around for the Star Caps incident with the Vikings. Do you guys remember that one where they just dragged it out? This like Star Caps, it was on the banned list. They just dragged it out for like a full year and a half, and Dan and Pat Williams played all the games, and then they just retired. Before they got suspended, they were like, "Yeah, we retire." So I mean, it's entirely possible. Before we move on, Kluge, I did want to ask you because you're an unbiased analyst, but you're very plugged in with the Bears. So I would like to know your thoughts on David Montgomery, if you have a second. I've been trying to track you down on this, but you're a busy guy. So can you hit us with the David Montgomery real quick, whether you're in or out at this spot?
I got a pretty spicy Montgomery take, and I just don't think that he's that good of a running back. I think he's one of those guys that can do a lot of things well, but he can't do anything exceptionally well. The good news for him, though, is that is what keeps you on the field and gets you snaps. Like, he's not a great runner. He's not a great pass catcher. He's not a great pass blocker, but he can do all of those things adequately enough that he gets in coaches' good graces and it turns into snaps. But, I think that people are just again, I talked a little bit earlier about how some people just like make these judgments and get a little bit too naive with the way that they see things. And I think that people just assume that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery is going to be Jamal Williams. I don't think that David Montgomery is built for that role. I mean, he's not that good at the goal line. I don't think that he's going to be seeing 20 plus carries inside the 5 like we saw from Jamal Williams last year. So I'm kind of out on David Montgomery at cost. I liked it at first, but the more I look into it, the more I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the focal point here. And they don't have that much money tied up in David Montgomery. He's not exceptionally good. I think that they'll probably finish somewhere around 150, 200 carries, but he's not going to have a lot of pass catching upside. And I don't think he's going to see anywhere near the red zone touches that Jamal Williams did last year.
But did you see the ESPN graphic whenever he was drafted about how he has all the elite skills of every running back that was in the league at that point?
Like half Bo Jackson, half OJ Simpson. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So look, you might want to sell it to that guy that made that graphic for ESPN on if he's really that good or not.
The Bears, they traded up when they didn't have a first or second pick, right? Oh my God.
Right. After David Montgomery with Jahan Dotson at the 7-8, George Pickens at the 7-9. Rhett, I know you've made a profile on George Pickens. I know that's a guy that you like quite a bit. We talked about Kamara, Quentin Johnson at the 7-11. A guy I was hoping to be able to stack with Herbert a little bit later. My dreams of that are gone. Deshaun Watson at the 7-12. Juju at the 8-1. Javonte at the 8-2. I'm a little nervous, ain't going to lie. Trevor Lawrence at the 8-3. I think that might be the best value at this point, and the reason why I just continue to wait on quarterback and why, obviously Lawrence wouldn't have made it to me there, but I think that's great value. I had Lawrence one spot behind Herbert, and you got him almost 3 entire rounds later after I took Herbert. So I love that value. Rhett took Dalvin Cook at the 804. Another player I like a lot this year, Antonio Gibson at the 805, Anthony Richardson at the 86, Zach Charbonnet at the 807, A.J. Dillon at the 808, Kadarius Toney at 809, Michael Thomas at 810. I think this is another guy people are going to be very curious about. So talk to us a little bit about Michael Thomas.
So
we just bust out the launch pad from a couple weeks ago, Coop.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem talking about Michael Thomas. How much time you got? Like this, we're talking about a guy who's been he was at one point there the best wide receiver in the league, and it wasn't a question. He has the record for receptions, and when you really go back and go through what went down and why he became a quote unquote diva, like this guy hurt his ankle week 1 and played through that entire season in 2020. Like he kept getting hurt, kept coming back, but he played in the playoffs. It's not like this guy just like shut it down. It's not like he hasn't played ball in 3 years. He played through the playoffs in 2020. Then he had surgery on the ankle, right? The same injury that Tony Pollard had last year, mind you, right? A high ankle sprain where the bone breaks and you have to have surgery, tightrope surgery. Like that's done. He missed the entire year because of it in 2021 because it was late when it was done. And then last year he comes back and he plays and he looks great. He's on pace for 90 targets, which is what 90 receptions, which is what DK Metcalf had. He had scored 3 touchdowns. You can't take that and project it out to a full season, or would you say he would projected to score 17 touchdowns? But then he hurts his toe, and not his big toe, but his second toe, right? So there's a world where this guy is healthy, a world where a team might be willing to bet, I don't know, $10 to $15 million that he plays. If they're willing to bet 10 to 15 million, 10, he gets the 10 no matter what. But if they're going to give him 10 million up to 15 million to play, because he might still be Michael Thomas and he's excited to play with Derek Carr. And last year with the scrubs they had, he scored 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Then I can throw a bench spot at him, which is where you have to draft this guy to see if maybe Michael Thomas is still Michael Thomas. Like, what if he comes back and he's okay? And now all of a sudden everybody else is drafting, Michael Williams, who gets hurt every single year, or Dallas Goedert and George Kittle, who have been hurt 4 years in a row. Right? Like if we're playing the Dr. Fortune Teller game, you can't draft anybody. So I'm drafting Michael Thomas. I don't care. Everybody shut up. I'm also going to draft another guy, mega reach right here, because I want to make sure that I get him and I don't care. So how about that?
Go ahead and do it. I'm not mad at you.
Yes. Yes.
How about that? How about that?
It sounds like you just hurt some feelings. I'm not going to lie. I just had my first Hope of Duties snipe where I took James Cook as an auto draft. I would not have taken Cook there, but it is what it is. Samaje Perine Tua at the 8-9 turn. And then a guy I did want to take, somebody that I am above consensus on, is Rashad Bateman. I think that he is in my opinion, he's the number 2 target in a Ravens offense that I think going to pass more this year, behind Mark Andrews. And then Coop, I want to open the floor back to you. Talk to us about Chig. You don't have to sell any of us. I know me and Rhett are both huge Chig Okonkwo fans, but
here's what I'll do, because I just talked for way too long, dude. And Kluge, we've done enough shows to, you can't let me go, dude. I'll get out of control. So what I'll give you guys is a cheat sheet that you could put on a little card, like a little 2-second card that you can hand somebody. Like, here's why we like Chig, is because his small sample size metrics as a rookie were essentially the same as Mark Andrews, except better.
Right.
Same target share, same percentages, better yards per route run. Every single metric, contested catches, everything except ADOT, right? And then his profile lends towards George Kittle with the same 4.52 speed. He had 3 40-plus yard plays. That, like, if you combine that all together, earlier I said all we need is more snaps, more targets, sprinkle that onto this machine that's very efficient. That's why we like Chig, man. And if Chig isn't good, then who cares? Because most of the tight ends aren't going to be good. We'll find another one.
Yeah.
On the show a couple of weeks ago, I think the biggest thing is like people knock Chig for being an undersized tight end. It's like he's not an undersized tight end. He's an oversized slot receiver. Like anybody worrying about him being
that's what I'm saying, dude.
Tight end, that's great, because they're not going to ask him to block. They're not going to ask him to sit on the line. He's going to be running around every single time he's on the field.
That's what I'm saying. It's like Evan Ingram, right? With the right team, it's like if you compare him to tight ends, yeah, he's undersized. But if you compare him to Andre Johnson, he's about the right size, right?
Exactly.
Like
So after Chig and Pat Frymuth, we had OBJ going at the 9.5. Jorge said, Coop, that pick's for you as well. Cortland Sutton at the 9.6. Brandon Cooks at the 9.7. David Njoku, another tight end that I like quite a bit this year at the 9.8. Gabe Davis at the 9.9. We were just a little bit too early on the Gabe Davis hype, but I think, in the 9th round, I think that's much more reasonable this year than where he was going last year. Rhett, what do you say?
Red's killing me, man. Red is sniping me on every single pick. I'm getting pretty sick of this, if I'm being honest.
I'm sorry, bro.
He told you before the show. He tried to tell you.
He did.
Snap, dudes. Yo, it's that Devonta. If you just said you like Devonta Adams, he would have left you alone, bro.
Yeah,
right.
It's all love, bro. But look, this is all I'm doing right here. I hate Gabe Davis wholeheartedly, but getting Josh Allen at this point, you just have to chase the upside of the potential stack, and you know that those 1 to 2 league-winning weeks are going to come with Gabe Davis. I don't care that he's terrible. I do care that he has upside.
Oh my God. I've never heard somebody body Gabe Davis so hard after picking him, but
there's something on the board that I just want to call out real quickly here. Just, speaking a little bit of game theory here. Look in the 7th round, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnson all went round 7, and then Zay Flowers slips all the way to the 9-10 turn. Like, these guys are all picked back to back in the rookie draft. They're all untapped. Like, we don't know what these guys are going to bring to the table. We're expecting an uptick in pace and pass rate and all that stuff from Baltimore. That's a wild pick. I mean, I love the value there on that Zay Flowers pick. Just looking at where all the other first-round wide receivers went, the fact that Zay Flowers goes over 2 full rounds later, that's an awesome pick by Chris there.
Opportunity is king, man. And kind of crazy that he started 4 RBs and now he's kind of putting together a little crew there. That's looking pretty good.
I like what Chris is doing there. That's a good. Yeah. I like that.
A little dangerous taking if you start 4 RBs, then 4 RBs and a tight end, then he takes Jameson Williams. Man, Chris is living on the edge, baby. He's living on
the man has no fear.
Chris is out there. He's like, hold me now, because I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm feeling.
We got it. We got the singing clip.
There it is. Clip it in.
You have no idea, but on Fourth and Frames, we have a running thing where our guests have been singing for us. And Howard Bender's in a spot for us. Bob Harris is in a spot for us. And so we didn't even have to ask, and you just sang for us. So
you got to get Britt Flynn on, man. Britt Flynn she like crushed. She's like a legit good singer. Like, you got to get her on, man. She at the expo last year, she did Carrie Underwood, and everybody else was looking around like, does anyone else have to sing after this? Like,
yeah,
get Britt on.
Following that up.
Yeah.
All right, Rhett, you finally took a quarterback. You took Geno at the 10-4. You know I love the pick, but I'm curious, in a 1 quarterback league, taking your second quarterback, what your thoughts are there.
Well, at this point, we're not even going to lie to you. In a mock draft, you also have to look at the fact that somebody else is going to slip through the cracks on quarterback. And with a guy like Geno Smith, number 1, if Josh Allen goes down, you have another immediate starter that you can just slide in there. Number 2, game theory in a redraft league, somebody's going to want a quarterback at some point. So you might as well have a guy who I have ranked in the top 10 and just go ahead and have him to dangle just in case you need a trade value later on, man.
Okay, so you're doing the long con and you're trying to find somebody that needs a quarterback and you're trying to hit him with a trade as soon as the draft.
Probably Dave, since I've screwed him over this entire time.
I think Dave probably scratched you off his list.
Dead to me.
Hopefully a lot of drinks have been happening. Somebody's mad after the draft's over. They need a quarterback, and they'll be hitting you up. Evan Ingram at the 10.05. Interesting back-to-back tight end. As far as that goes, Rashad Penny at the 10.6. I like that pick. I'm not going to lie. 10.07, Elijah Mitchell. We talked about him a little bit, talking about CMC. We're not concerned about him cutting into that, but could be a very valuable handcuff. Roshan Johnson, 10.08. Again, I think that's handcuff territory. Jamal Williams at the 10.09. Coop, you're on the clock here in the 10th round. Talk to me. What you thinking?
Yeah, so I'm looking around here, and again, this speaks to your waiting on quarterbacks, that there's a lot of quarterbacks just kind of hanging around where it's like you have no problem starting those guys for the first couple of weeks at the very least, where you try to find upside elsewhere. I look around and I would much rather not have taken Joe Burrow and sit here and say, hey, I'll double tap 2 of these guys, right? Like Daniel Jones ran for 700 yards last year. So I don't think that's a crazy situation. What I'm going to do here is just go to uncertainty. Like, we're getting to the stage of the game where we might as well lean into a bit of uncertainty. So if we don't know who's going to be the target leader for the Carolina Panthers, I look around and say, hey, let's say all things are equal. Why not lead into the guy that has the red zone prowess, right? The ability to push off and get away with it, which some guys have, some guys don't. So Julio Jones, if he was just cheat a little more, he could have been like he just didn't have that extra red zone prowess in him. But Adam Thielen, I think, there's something to be said for his ability to score in that area. So I'll take him there. The thing is, though, I'm cool with taking any of those guys. In this case, I did take him, but I'd be cool waiting and taking any of the other guys too. Did Mingo already go? I didn't even see.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't think he has gone.
Yeah. So just think about this. We're at round 10.
A little bit too.
They're all good, man. We're around 10 right now. So we're talking ADP 120, and they're all there. So you can kind of pick your poison, lean into uncertainty. Just think about this team in 2020. Same team, but it was a whole different crew. They brought in a new coach, new coordinator, new quarterback. They brought in Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. Everyone thought it was DJ Moore, but Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson scored more points, right? So I look at this and I say, oh, well, okay, new coach, new quarterback. All these guys are new. Thielen wasn't here. Chark wasn't here. Mingo wasn't here. Terrace Marshall, I guess, is hanging out, but it could be anybody, right? It could be anybody.
I don't know if you've heard, but Terrace Marshall's apparently the guy to own once again in that wide receiver room.
I'll defend Terrace Marshall. I'll say that they should have fired Matt Rule instead of Joe Brady, and if Joe Brady was still there, Terrace Marshall, who played for him at LSU, probably would be in better favor. I don't know. Kluge, actually.
We can't fall on that sword. Somebody had to go.
Somebody did.
It's unfortunate that he was the one.
And now he's coaching for the Bills. And now next year he should be one of the. If the Bills are good once again, he should be a top candidate for offensive coordinator, I believe. But once these Panthers come off the board, I'd like to know who you guys like best at the ADP they go at, because it is kind of interesting discussion. And I picked the most boring one. I 100% did.
He is the most boring, but he could be the most productive too, though. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Kluge, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. I know I did a Dynasty buy piece on Khalil Herbert prior to the NFL draft as a guy, that was before they drafted Roschon Johnson. That was before they signed Deontay Foreman. I liked what I saw on the field from Khalil Herbert. We knew that David Montgomery was going to be out, and so I took him here at the 10-11 turn. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on the Bears backfield, how you think it's going to shake out, and your thoughts on Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, I think this is a one. I mean, we could talk about this backfield for a half hour because nobody really has any idea. We're all shooting in the dark here. Right. Khalil Herbert, if you look at, Cooper was talking about it earlier, the nerdy efficiency metrics. Khalil Herbert is in the upper quartile of every single chart that you look at. Rushing yards over expectation, juke rate, broken tackle rate, breakaway run rate, you name it. This man was just popping off the charts. But his huge deficiency as a football player is what he can do in the passing game. He can't catch passes and he can't pass block. And those are two big deficiencies to have. So I worry a little bit that he's just going to be stuck in this role where he's kind of the between the 20s grinder, getting the early down work, and doesn't really have any upside in the passing game. The other thing to think about when they drafted Khalil Herbert, they drafted him a different GM and a different head coach ago. So this was Ryan Pace drafted him to be the running back behind David Montgomery on Matt Nagy's offense, who all of those people are gone now. It's a completely different staff. So when they went out and drafted Roschon Johnson, that felt like a very intentional move. We're going to spend an early day three pick on somebody who does everything well that Khalil Herbert does poorly. Yeah. So I think if you're looking at a pure projection standpoint, Khalil Herbert is the favorite out of the backfield. Just looking at what he's done over the years, he's a good running back. He should get some run. But I think if you're looking for upside, which especially late in drafts, here we are in the 10th round, Roschon Johnson also went in the 10th round. I actually do prefer Roschon Johnson because his involvement in the passing game gives him a much higher ceiling. So if I had to make a bet right now, who is more likely to score the most fantasy points, I'm taking Khalil Herbert. But if I'm saying who's the guy that's going to give me RB1 upside that can be like a game-breaking type of player, that's going to be Roschon Johnson for me. Right.
Yeah. To your point, I mean, pass pro, not exactly Herbert's strength. Pass catching, not exactly Herbert's strength. Roschon, he's good at both of those. So that's a really good point. Nico Collins went at the 10-12. I know that'll make Rhett happy. Kirk Cousins, again, we're seeing a couple quarterbacks going off the board. I took Tyler Higbee at the 11-2. It's partial Rams fandom, partial need at the tight end position. Don't have one yet. I think I saw shout out to a guy on Twitter. I'm going blank, but It was essentially tight ends with 145 plus PPR points the last 2 years. It was pretty much a list of guys that were like in the top 8 and everybody's tight end rankings, and then Tyler Higbee. And I just from the Rams pass catching standpoint, there's a bunch of guys that I don't think are really there to threaten Higbee as the potential second option in that offense. Dalton Kincaid, everybody's favorite rookie tight end in the 11th round here. Coop, talk to us about Dalton Kincaid. And we kind of prefaced this with Higbee earlier. I would love to hear your thoughts on Higbee as well.
Yeah, so with Higbee, you're picking the safe option. So my strategy for late round tight end, if anyone's never heard it, it's called yin and yang tight end. And the whole idea is to wait as long as possible and then take one safe player, and then the next guy you take, so you take 2 tight ends. I know frowned upon, but like most leagues these days, that's what I'm saying. It's like somebody once read it in a magazine at a gas station and decided you could never do it. It's like, that is so wrong, because we've been doing it for years, and that's how we got Mark Andrews and Darren Waller and Eric Ebron and Evan Ingram twice and Logan Thomas and Dalton Schultz and all these guys have finished top 5. Is because we're drafting 2, and we're also on the lookout for the next one, right? So a great yin and yang pairing would be Tyler Higbee to start for you, because the targets will be there. The rest of the profile is what, even as a Rams fan, you'll admit, Drew, he gets open and he catches it. Does it look pretty? Like when I say, show me the Tyler Higbee highlight, like what are you pulling up? Like what are you sending? I
don't want to pull it up. Don't ask me to do that.
If you send me the cool play, like he is the stat, but like it looks like he can get there, and I like him as a safe guy. But then you take a Kincaid. I wish Okonkwo, like we've steamed him up. It's our fault, Kluge. Like we've too much talking about him has moved him up. But like you take Higbee and then you take somebody safe. So like Higbee, Kincaid's a great pairing. In my case, I went yang tight end. I went Okonkwo, Kincaid, just double upside. One of them's going to be my guy. I already have, you start 2 tight ends, 3 wide receivers. I already have 3 running backs. You start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. I already have 3 running backs. I already have 4 wide receivers. I took a quarterback early. Like I can get away with it, And I like Laporta, Schultz, like these guys. You look around, these guys now going. Paint yourself a picture. Who could be a top 2 target on their team? Dalton Schultz, Sam Laporta. Yes. Greg Dulcich. I'm a little worried about that. Like offense over there. There's a million weapons. So that's the game you have to play in this area.
I'm just gonna say reports out of Denver are that Cortland Sutton is looking good. I mean, I'm not trying to beat the drum for Cortland Sutton. I had egg all over my face last year. I'm a little more cautiously optimistic about it this year. But yeah, Tim Patrick's getting a lot of hype. Marvin Mims is getting a lot of hype. But everyone says that Cortland Sutton is looking like pre-ACL Cortland Sutton. I mean, that was a terrible injury that he had. And then he had setbacks throughout his recovery as well. So, man, if Cortland Sutton could return to form after what we saw from Jerry Jeudy last year, what we saw from Greg Dulcich, Tim Patrick coming back, the investment in Marvin Mims, it's going to be an insane offense in Denver.
That's what I'm saying. And you look at what they're doing, what Sean Payton's doing. He's bringing it.
The tight end run. Oh, my God.
There it goes. I'm telling you, when you pick Okonkwo or you pick somebody, like if you like Okonkwo pick, when I pick him, everybody else looks around and they say, oh, I have Freiermuth ahead, so I'll take Freiermuth. It does trigger runs when you make those moves, right?
It does. I was hoping to get a tight end to be able to double tap at this point, to be honest, because I like Higbee as a safe option to start the year, but I want somebody with more upside to be able to finish out the season. Apparently, I'm going to have to go trade for him because draft him just doesn't seem like an option. Coop, Dave, I want to let you both know we appreciate your time that you've given us tonight. I know we only planned for an hour. We're over that point. I don't want to guilt trip you or anything like that. I want to let you know if you guys need to dip, because I know we're already over the point that we planned on. If you guys need to bail on this mock, please feel free to do so without any reservations on our end. We're good.
I already made it 12 rounds. I can make it 4 more.
Right. Unless, okay. But I reserve the right. I reserve the right to angrily leave if I get sniped on something.
Yeah. You got to reach the rage quit now.
Yeah, I reserve the right to throw my headset and throw my keyboard, Right. So, but yeah, we'll hang, man. But what I was gonna say about the Dolphins, real quick with the Broncos, man, is that like you look at what Sean Payton's doing. Not only does he have all these weapons, but he brings in all these blocking tight ends, and he brought in the fullback Michael Burton. Last time Michael Burton was there with the Saints, he with Sean Payton, he was playing 35% of the snaps. That doesn't sound like much. But when you put that guy in, the third wide receiver comes out. So how are you going to mix in even 15 to 20% of the snaps for a fullback, and then Adam Trotman playing even 10 or 20, or Alberto or any of these blocking tight ends, and still find the snaps for Dulcich and Mims and Judy and Sutton and Patrick. It's a bit of a clown car over there, to be honest.
You know what I hear when you're saying this too? Draft Russell Wilson. That's all.
Yeah,
Russell Wilson is bouncing back. I've been talking about it all off season.
It's happening.
I mean, I think it was just a joke last year what they had going on with Nathaniel Hackett. And he also, like, I don't want to try to get in the psychology of an NFL player too much, but first time in his NFL career, he had to play with a new coach, new team, new city, new teammates. Like, it was such a huge change for him. There were some growing pains there, but I mean, I don't have an excuse for what he looked like early in the season. I mean, it was terrible. That was not the Russell Wilson I've seen throughout his career, but I had a little bit of hope at the end of the season when Hackett was gone, when he started to look like the old Russ again. And I've been all in on a Russ Wilson bounce back.
And I mean, not for nothing, but I think, I don't remember if it was his strength and conditioning coach or somebody close to him, but somebody close in his circle, I think, passed away too in the midst of all these changes as well. So I don't think it's something that can be so easily dismissed either. So I think that's a good point. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. So we talked about Chicago backfield already. The other backfield that I'm struggling with, and I shot my shot here in the 12th round, but the Miami backfield, assuming Dalvin Cook doesn't sound there, let's just work off what we know already. How do you guys, Coop, Dave, what do you guys see this? How do you see this shaking out in Miami? Because I like Jeff Wilson quite a bit. I liked what I saw once they brought him over from San Francisco last year, but I don't know what to think at this point.
I want to hear Kluge's answer on this, but do I go to the loony bin right now and just take DJ Chark too right now? And just say,
I was considering taking him right there at my pick.
There's wide receivers out there somewhere. Like, one of these boys got to catch something, right?
Young next round.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it, dude. I can't do it. I might take Bryce Young later, but I got a guy that I actually have money on this guy, like plus 5,000. The guy I'm gonna take right now to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Kluge, tell me, please. This guy I'm taking right here. Kluge, please sort out this Dolphins running back room for all of us once and for all.
I just had on my show a couple weeks ago, JJ Zacharyson joined, and I was with Alfredo Brown, who is a Dolphins fan. And I was hoping, we got JJ, who was like built a career off of identifying the breakout players in ambiguous backfields. And then we got Alfredo Brown, who's a Miami Dolphins fan. I was like, surely we'll get some sort of good intel here. We got nothing. We talked about it for like 8 minutes and all just kind of shrugged our shoulders at the end. And we're like, yeah, so whatever, draft whoever falls and hope for the best. I do like A-Chain, and that's why I took him first. I took him in the 10th round. And again, kind of talking same thing. I'm going for upside, clearly. A-Chain, Kendre Miller, Tank Bigsby. Like, I'm going for the young rookies, hoping that one of these guys can hit in a zero running back build. So I think he's got the highest ceiling, just having that speed. Like, he fits in so well with what they're doing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and all that. But so does Raheem Mostert. I mean, big fear with him is that he's 31. But I do have Jeff Wilson Jr. pretty comfortably ahead of Raheem Mostert. So I think that you got the better value out of those two there, Drew. I'm sorry, Rhett. Don't snipe me, man. I'm just calling it like it is. I'm trying to be objective here. No, I can't take it again. But I think that
he'll leave.
It's my show and I'll leave. It's fine.
Just look at last year, right? Look at last year. They had Raheem Mostert, and he took the starting job. Chase Edmonds was just a horrific bust, and I'm proud of Mike McDaniel for noticing that after like 3 weeks and just saying, this dude sucks. We can't keep putting him on the phone or on the field anymore. So they went to Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert looked great in the opportunities they had, but they didn't trust him with the job for whatever reason. Like, they could have just rode out Raheem Mostert for the rest of the year, but they traded midseason for Jeff Wilson Jr., which scares me a little bit to think that they don't trust Raheem Mostert to take this big of a load. And then this offseason, they re-signed both guys, and Jeff Wilson Jr. got a bigger contract than Raheem Mostert. So looking at those two, I prefer A-Chain over the other two, but I think that Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to have more of an opportunity. He's younger, and he's being paid more money than Raheem Mostert.
This is always, when it comes to that, especially in standard or half PPR, I don't play standard, but you know what? Play whatever makes you happy. Yeah. Or if your hometown league is super stubborn, then play what you have to. But the question I always ask, and Kevin Tompkins will call Coop bingo on this one because I bring up this question all the time, but I think it's an important question. When you say let's say hypothetically, they chuck the ball downfield 40 yards, Tyreek Hill's about to catch it, and the defender knows it, so he grabs him and yanks him down in the end zone. We get a pass interference in the end zone. Since they were 40 yards back, they can send any player they want down to the goal line to punch it in. They're not going to do a QB sneak with Tua because he's got the concussion issues. What player gets that carry, Kluge?
Jeff Wilson Jr. He's the most violent runner of the bunch by far.
Right? Okay, so ready? Now let's say that happens with the Bears. What player gets that carry?
could be any of them. I mean, it could be any of them. It wouldn't surprise me if they bring Donta Foreman in.
That's what I'm saying. But Foreman's a monster. He is a big fella, right?
You know who's really getting that goal line touch in Chicago?
It's
Fields.
Justin Fields, but it's not Tua, and that's why I like David Montgomery too, because it's not Jared Goff. He's the least mobile guy there's ever been, and that's what scares me about guys like J.K.
Ever been.
Yeah, he's like one of those trees in Lord of the Rings, dude. Just like, I'm coming, but it's just like you can't like, and that's why J.K. Dobbins scares me a little bit. And I know Drew, you took J.K. Dobbins, so I got to ask. Lamar Jackson doesn't worry you with the lack of targets and the goal line stuff, or do you think maybe Todd Monken's going to open that up a little bit?
Right. So it does absolutely scare me, but I think the offense as a whole gets an uptick this year. And so I think that Dobbins, I think a lot of people that drafted him too early last year are a little bit too scared. It's pushing his ADP down a little bit. But no, anytime you have a quarterback that's capable of doing what Lamar and Fields and those guys are able to do in the red zone, it is a little bit scary, but I think that I'm comfortable taking where he's going right now. But if he rises too much as we get closer to redraft season, I might end up having to fade him a little bit.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, where you got him is right, but I just worry. Kluge, I love the Mike Gesicki pick, man.
If he gets much higher than where I got him at, I think at that point I'm going to end up fading him.
Oh, man. Bob Harrison here now. Now the party's getting full.
Now we can get started. Bob was the guy that started the whole like singing on the stream and things like that too. And so, shout out to you guys for keeping that going. Rhett, you and I are gonna have to duke it out apparently, because I took a little Herbert the 10th. You took Foreman in the 13th. I took Wilson in the 12th. You took Mostert in the 12th. We're kind of battling it out with these running back rooms that nobody knows what to do with. So talk to me a little bit about how you feel like these running back rooms are going to shake out.
Dude, I have no idea. So I'm just taking the spaghetti and throwing it at the wall and hoping that it sticks. I mean, we know that we have 3 different dudes in Chicago, and all of them could be the guy, and they're all relatively young, and they've all got low mileage. So we don't know what the hell is going to happen, if we're going to be perfectly honest. Miami, they're all a little bit oldish, except for A-Chain, who's the shiny new toy, who, like Dave said, is also my favorite among that bunch for the upside. But I mean, at this point, you take one of the pieces and you hope it sticks. And then a redraft format, if it doesn't work out, especially this late, you cut bait and you keep moving forward.
Right. I was able
to find mine. I think it's hilarious. I went with like the shiny new toy rookies and then just like the dustiest running back on the board. Just like followed up 3 rookies with Ezekiel Elliott. Let's hope he lands somewhere.
For what it's worth, though, I love Kendrick Miller where you got him. Like, he might be my favorite of all the rookie running backs not named Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson.
So actually, I have him ranked ahead of A-Chain. The only reason that I went with A-Chain there is because I already had Kamara, and I didn't want 2 of my first 3 running back picks to be on the same team. But then he made it back to me in the next round, and I just had to pick him there.
I almost took Kendrick Miller 9 rounds ago. Like, I was really thinking about it. I was thinking about it pretty hard. Like, thank God. I think I took Rachaad White there, but like, I was really thinking about it, man.
So I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Like, I'm not a college football guy. I don't watch a ton of college football. I keep it on like background noise on Saturdays when I'm doing things around the house or whatever. Every time a TCU game was on, I was just like slack-jawed at something that Kendrick Miller would do. And I was like asking all my buddies that were Devy guys and college guys. I was like, this Kendrick Miller dude seems really good. And everyone kept telling me I was crazy. And they're just like, nah, like highlights only. And I remember I ran a poll early, like before the draft. And I said, where is Kendrick Miller going to get drafted? And I had all the different rounds on there. And people were saying that he was going to be a day 3 pick going to undrafted. So I was pretty happy to see him get that draft capital and a good landing spot, because he's just so much fun to watch. And he can do things in the passing game. He can do things between the tackles, out in space. He just does it all.
Yeah, shout out to my guys over there. There's a Colts podcast, the Blue Stable. They had Kendrick Miller on, and they asked him about his lack of usage in the passing game. And he came out and said, look, I got hands, I can catch. They just the offense didn't ask me to do that, but in the situations I needed to, I could do it, and I'm looking forward to showing that in the future. So I love that. I loved hearing that. I thought that was great.
Miles Sanders said the same thing about the Eagles. He was like, that's not how we do things here, but he could do it. I've seen him do it. He got 50 balls, right? So I'm excited for it. I just want to give one thing that I've actually leaned into this a little bit this year in draft. So I took the 49ers defense there, where I realized that in a lot of these leagues, especially if your league makes you draft, I know in this one, it probably isn't set up that way. If your league makes you draft a kicker and defense, especially if you're at that turn at the end, take the defense there. Like if I'm sitting in a league where I have to draft a kicker and defense, and I have 3 picks left, what's the difference between me taking the defense, the 49ers, that I believe is the best defense for fantasy here versus my next pick where I would be forced to take them just to make sure I get the guy I want and then take whoever next time. So
I'm
like
all about paying up for a round early, just
be a little bit.
Yeah. There's
a little bit, right?
Between 15th and a 16th round wide receiver, but getting that number 1 overall defense is huge. Yeah.
It's crazy. And like we loved the 49ers defense last year. What did they do? They added Javon Hargrave. They literally the guy that knocked out their quarterback in the playoffs and caused all the turmoil. They're like, let's just bring that guy over
We're
here.
gonna go get that guy.
Yeah, we'll get that guy and then this won't happen again, right? Like that's what they pulled. But I mean, like, why can't that defense be fantastic? Because DeMeco Ryans left. I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Yeah. And that was kind of the last question I wanted to ask as we were wrapping this thing up was, in leagues where you like maybe you have to roster a kicker or a defense, but you don't have to draft them. Are you guys just ignoring those positions and grabbing receivers or running backs that you like as late round flyers and then just picking those guys up off waivers? Or how are you addressing that in the later rounds?
That's exactly what I'm doing right now, because what I can do with hopefully this next pick that I make, somebody's going to be cuttable before the season starts off. So, maybe Ezekiel Elliott doesn't sign somewhere and just decides that he's going to retire. Or maybe my next pick that I'm about to make here, maybe he gets, cut before week 1 or something like that. I'll address kicker and defense the day before the season kicks off, and I'll just ride through with all these guys, because who knows? I mean, I got CeeDee Lamb as my number 1 overall pick. I got Michael Gallup as my 15th pick. Not that I want it to happen, but there's still a lot of practice left. There's still a lot of offseason left. CeeDee Lamb goes down. I cut him from my team knowing he's not playing this year. Michael Gallup spikes in value. So I'm just going to let things play out during camp and stash as many players as I can. This pick right here. What happens if Josh Jacobs goes down tomorrow? Zamir White all of a sudden is a top 20 pick in fantasy.
Kluge, let me ask you. You picked Michael Gallup there last round, but based on what we had just talked about, what defenses, if they were there, would you have considered there if you were like
the Patriots, which were the very next pick? I mean, if I had,
I meant of the ones that have already been drafted. So let's say no defense had been drafted. Which ones would you consider over Gallup? So you could pick anyone you want: Steelers, 49ers, anybody.
I don't know if I'm picking any. I mean, like a gun to my head, maybe I'll go with the Eagles, like having to take a defense ahead, but I just don't think that there's a big enough advantage there, especially when they have poor matchups. Then you're stashing 2 defenses. I'm just a 100% stream defenses through the season. Yeah. And if you stumble into that, like a few years ago, I was streaming defenses, ended up with the Patriots. You remember that, Coop? What was that, 2019, I want to say? Where just put
do I remember? Oh, boy. Yeah. My boy, Stephon Gilmore, won Defensive Player of the Year was that year, I believe, right? So,
yeah. And every once in a while, you stumble into like a set and forget defense. But for the most part, usually what I like to do is start stashing defenses once I've locked in my playoff spot. Playoffs are starting in week 14, and I've got a winning record, and I know that I'm locking in a playoff spot. Then I start looking ahead, and all right, can I pick up these 2 or 3 defenses that I can kind of coordinate their schedules with each other? Shout out Football Guys. They've got the schedule tool right there that makes it real easy for you.
Yeah. With kicker, I do that. Well, basically with kicker, I'd never draft one. Then I just beg Linda at Lindellians, Lindellions. I just beg her to tell me who to pick every week. So, but she puts the rankings out anyway. But yeah, kicker, I do that. Defense, every once in a while, I will do that, especially in drafts like this.
In your DM saying, what tight end should I play this?
I know.
Went down. What do I do? I mean, you lean on people that know better than you.
I do the same thing with you all the time. Bears questions and wide receiver questions. Like I'm in there. I'm like, okay, I'm like this guy or this guy, So, but that's the thing about this industry is that you don't have to do it all by yourself, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And speaking of that kind of wraps up our show for tonight. We had 2 incredible guests tonight. But so before we get out of here, I'd be remiss if saying, Dave, real quick, let us know, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on. The floor is yours, man.
Yeah, I make it easy. Just follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's where you'll find all the written content, video content, all that fun stuff. When I'm guesting on shows like I am right now, I'll share it from my Twitter page. So just find me there and you'll see everything I'm up to.
Cool. Same thing to you, man. The floor is yours. Let us know where they can find you, what you got going on.
The question is typically the same for me. You just follow my Twitter. But this time around, if you want to support me, you really appreciate the things I do. Sometimes I have people they'll ask me questions in my DMs, which are open. And then they'll be like, can I Venmo you money or whatever? I'm like, yeah, not you, Kluge.
I don't know if I Venmo you.
Kluge, I say, send me the Venmo. No, but I say, don't Venmo me. If you want to support me and what I do, get the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, which is up right now. It's a living draft guide, so stuff comes out every week. And you have my rankings in there, my yin and yang tight end rankings, the dynamic rankings, and I'm doing my Scott Fishbowl rankings. Like, so people in Boston live draft, annoyingly are going to 100%, be doing that or whatever. But that's the best way to support me, man. I love and appreciate anyone that is doing that. And if you do get it, send me an @ on Twitter @Coupe Fiasco, letting me know that you did get it, because truly that supports me directly. And I appreciate all y'all. And I appreciate you guys for having me on, man. You guys are awesome.
No, thank you both so much for joining us. For my co-host, Rhett, you can find him on Twitter @RManuelSports. Chris @FFChrisB. He wasn't able to join us tonight. My name is Drew. You can find me @Drew3MR. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great night. For my co-host, Chris, toodles.